Hello and welcome to Legalbytes. If you're new here, my name is Alita. I'm a lawyer licensed in California and DC, and on this channel, we explain the law one bite at a time. We don't give legal advice, but we do talk about how the law works and try to look into our crystal ball to see how things might turn out. If you're enjoying this on YouTube, we'd love it if you could like the video, subscribe to the channel, share it with friends, all the great YouTube-y stuff. And if you want to listen while out and about, we're now offering our live streams in podcast form where you can leave a rating and review. Links are in the description below, as well as to our clips channel where you can find some of the best clips taken from our live streams. Otherwise, if you want to catch me elsewhere, you can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. And if you want to support the channel, you can do so on Locals, Patreon, or by becoming a YouTube member, or by buying some really awesome Legalbytes merch. Again, all links are in the description below. And with that said, let's get into it.
All right, you guys. So testimony's been going on for about 5 minutes, I want to say. So we're not too far behind, but we'll get caught up during one of the sidebars or recesses anyway. So anyway, thanks for coming back for the afternoon session of day 8 of New Mexico versus Hannah Gutierrez-Reed. Today we had a few witnesses, and then before we got to Seth Kenney, and I'm not gonna lie, so far Seth Kenney's been a little bit of a nothing burger. So we'll see how this goes with the rest of his cross-examination. Maybe lunch gave Jason Bowles the fuel that he needed to sort of bring out some extra punches for what he needs for his case, because I mean the prosecution doesn't necessarily need him all that much. It's really the defense that has been making a huge deal about Seth Kenney being one of the two main boogeymen, right? We've got Alec Baldwin, we've got Seth Kenney. Those are the two main boogeymen in this trial for the defense. So it's like, if anybody needs this to be kind of punchy, it's really the defense. So all right, folks, we're going to just jump right into it. I'm going to go through and save the questions that I think there are a couple here, maybe one or two. And we'll answer those on sidebars and whatnot. So, all right, let's get to it.
Please continue.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Mr. Kenney, before lunch, we talked about that you had approximately 125 live rounds from the 1883 set that came back. Is that correct?
That's great. That's correct.
And you also testified that the state took 10 live rounds total from your place, correct?
I don't recall that. No, they from the 45 Colt ammunition, they took all of them.
And we've seen the pictures, there was 10 total on what was shown today. Do you recall that testimony?
10 live.
Yes.
He's starting to testify. That's what the objection is. Why is this frozen? Okay. So this is anytime Bowles starts saying, well, yeah, this is what it was. There were 10 rounds there that were found. That's him testifying. He's not supposed to do that. He's supposed to say, like, well, what if if I told you there were 10, would that sound correct? That's a way of sort of kind of testifying without testifying. You're still putting it into the form of a
Mr.
question.
Kenney, do you have reloading equipment?
I don't.
What?
I don't.
Do you recall on the interview on July 11th, 2023, I asked you if you had any reloading equipment and you said, I do?
Oh.
Possibly in California. Possibly.
Okay. Does that mean you do have reloading equipment?
Well, PDQ doesn't have reloading equipment, and we don't reload.
Okay, sir, but do you recall when I asked you, now, do you have any reloading equipment? Your answer was, I do.
Personally, in California, there may be. I haven't seen it.
So this is another
and you know how
inconsistency.
To convert a dummy round from into a live round, don't you?
Hypothetically.
Yeah, because hypothetically, don't you recall telling Detective Hancock that if the camera crew, let me just get the wording so I don't misquote it.
Real quick, Manny Fabani, do you think lawyer resents the witness for not being bald? No, I don't think so. There's nothing to indicate that. But thanks for being a member
If the
for 19
camera
months.
crew wanted to send a little going away present, and then you described the process. Do you recall that?
No, I don't recall it.
If I showed this to you, would it refresh your memory?
Sure.
It's gonna be on this page, and then-
But Seth does have a good head of hair.
How far do you want me to read down?
Just the highlighted portions.
Okay.
Mr. Bowles, is that the July 11 transcript?
That is the November with Detective Hancock. Okay, sir, does that refresh your memory?
It does.
So now do you recall having a conversation with Detective Hancock about how one could turn a dummy into a live round?
Yes.
And can you tell Jerry, how would you do that?
Well, the easiest thing would be to have reloading equipment press out the inert primer in first, but if we imagine a dummy round where the bullet is actually pressed into the case, and you had an inert primer, you'd need a fairly complicated setup of reloading equipment. You need either a kinetic bullet puller to remove the bullet from the case. If you used a set of pliers, it would mangle the bullet and prevent seating afterwards in a die if you had reloading equipment. So you'd have to somehow remove the bullet from the case. We're assuming there's a BB or a number 2 lead shot rattle that would have to be removed. You'd have to have a decapper to press out the inert primer, and then you could use the same bullet, assuming it wasn't mangled, and you'd have to have a live primer and a charge of powder, and then be able to have the appropriate dye and seat it to the appropriate depth, as well as putting in again the fresh primer installer.
Okay, and then you'd have to get the proper amount of grains of powder in there as well.
Yes.
Okay, and what would that generally be?
Well, historically, I think in the pre-1900 era, it would be roughly 28 grains of powder from memory, if that's correct. And then it depends on the powder as well, all the way up to the case capacity, which means essentially you fill it up all the way and maybe even press the bullet into the case so it's compacting the powder.
Real quick, X-Files Inc. Thanks for the super chat. Ask about Sarah Zachary throwing rounds away after the phone call. That time probably would have come when he was oh, I guess he hasn't asked about that yet. That came up on direct. Well, not that specifically, but that the phone call and the text message between him and Sarah Zachary. So I'm hoping it does come up, but this cross examination has gotten so long and winding. I'm not sure if he's going to get there or if the jury's going to be paying attention when he does. Manny Fabani, thanks so much for the super chat. You think witness resents lawyer for nice shiny head? You said that before in your member chat. There's nothing to indicate that, but I don't know. Who knows? Maybe he's confident about his shiny cap.
Now, I want to go over something you said before lunch on the leathers. You said that these were mailed back from the Old Way movie by Hannah to yourself, and that you provided these to her, correct?
Yeah, they were shipped back via FedEx.
And they were shipped in a box from the old way, and then you never removed them from the box, correct?
That's correct.
She does look like
So,
she's about
but
to fall
then
asleep.
would you agree with me then that those leathers were then used on the Rust side?
I don't know that. Alls I know is that that box, and I'm unaware of the quantity in there. I did take a photo at the time. I don't know how many were in there and whether or not they used them.
Okay, so you opened it up and you looked in it.
Yes, I opened it up. I took a picture.
Boosted the sound for you guys.
With regard to the prop truck search, we didn't talk about that yet. When you went to the set on October 27th, you already had the code to the safe, correct?
Yes.
And Sarah had given that to you?
Yeah, she sent it to me by text.
Sarah was technically your employee of PDQ Props, correct?
Sure, she was the representative of PDQ for the Rust production.
And she's the one that called you right after the shooting incident. You all talked for 30 seconds to a minute. Is that right?
It was a very quick conversation, yes.
And your testimony under oath is that you did not tell her to throw any of those rounds away.
Oh, absolutely not.
Okay. But then she did throw them away.
I learned about that months later.
Yeah. And did you know that guns had been transported from the cart? Did you tell her to do that?
No.
Okay. Did you train Sarah before she worked on Rust?
I did.
And you trained her in what? In gun safety or what?
Yeah, the basics of using blank adapted guns and blanks and dummy rounds on a set.
And I take it you never trained her to throw away dummy rounds after a scene.
Oh, well, I don't recall that conversation or even indicating at what point you would want to throw away dummy rounds.
Because they're rented, right?
They are rented.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Now, you also gave Hannah shells on the Old Way movie, spent shells. Do you recall that?
Spent shells? No.
You didn't provide her 2 bags of spent shells?
No.
You knew that Joe Swanson loaded Trail Boss type powder. That's one of the powder he uses, correct?
Sometime after a meeting with Detective Hancock, trying to trace down the origin of the live rounds found on Rust, that was part of the questioning of that. I did call him and say, do you recall?
And don't get into what he said.
Okay.
But your impression after it was that your understanding is he loads Trail Boss powder.
Yes.
Okay. You also remember telling Detective Hancock after you called Troy Teskey that he was willing to provide a box and a half of reloads, the same batch from Joe Swanson?
I remember that conversation. I don't remember the quantity of which he was willing to provide.
Okay, so in any event, whatever the quantity was, you knew that Troy Teskey had rounds from the same batch of live reloads from Joe Swanson.
That's what I understood.
And you understood that he was willing to provide those, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Manny Fabani, thanks for the super chat. You think he considers glasses frames deeply because bald? I'm not sure exactly what your question is, but my guess is probably, I'm going to say probably no. Okay, thanks. He's got some long-winded answers. And on cross-examination,
Okay, I want
it's actually
to show you,
relatively
sir,
easy to control.
some of the pictures that have been introduced, and I want to go over these with you. First one, Mr. Kinney, is defendant's L18, and I want to show you this photo. Can you tell the jury what this depicts?
It depicts a shelf at PDQ's office in Albuquerque with a blank supply.
Okay, now I want you to look at the box at the top that says me see if I can zoom in. 30 Mauser. See that?
Yes.
Does that appear the font similar to the font on the box that we saw earlier? It was in Lieutenant Benavides' vehicle in the set of rust.
Well, I recognize that as a Joe Swanson label.
And you have Joe Swanson labels then in your business, correct?
Yes.
Now, the other thing that I've noticed on some of these photos, and I'll show you, but that some of them have JS, some of them don't. Is that a fair statement?
I noticed the JS. I don't notice when it's omitted.
How do you get those labels? Do you make those labels?
No, that's all a Joe Swanson manufacturing supply.
Okay. I want to show you defendant's L15. And that's, we've seen this earlier on a different angle. This is more of a close-up. What are the boxes to the right of the shelf?
There are, well, I know that shelf fairly well. There's a mixture of, on top, we've seen a collection, what appear to be 12 gauge blanks.
Okay, and then how about the boxes underneath? And I'm going to point to these boxes in here.
Yeah, more blanks stored in bulk.
Just stored together in bulk.
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Kinney, how about these loose rounds in the bag up here by the firearms? You see those? Not loose, they're in a baggie, are they?
Yeah, again, stored in bulk. From memory, I think they're 500 per bag, approximately.
What type of rounds are those?
They look to be 223.
Are you certain?
No.
Okay. How about defendant's L2? What is this scene? Oh, jeez, sorry. What is this scene here? Defendant's L2.
That's in the backyard
And what
of PDQ's headquarters or PDQ's space in Albuquerque.
What are all the boxes there for?
They're just waiting to be thrown out.
And you know how long they've been sitting there before they were thrown out?
Well, in that pile is one of the boxes is from the shipment of the new guns from Pieta. So some of it very recent.
From Pieta before the movie?
From before the movie, correct.
Okay, so that would have been in October, early October, when you got that Pieta. So this was late November.
Yeah, so they've been there roughly a month.
Yeah, Hannah looks like
Month
she's
and a half.
struggling to stay awake,
Okay.
which I don't exactly blame her.
How about defendant's L5? Can you tell the jury what this is? Is that
It's the same view, the same stack of boxes looking to the side gate exit entry.
okay? Sir, how about defendant's L6? Can you tell the jury what's in that picture?
There'll be a lot of empty gun cases. Some of them are populated with guns and other props. Underneath, there's a bunch of locked cabinets with firearms and other various props inbound and outbound.
Okay, so some of these are live or real weapons.
Yeah, primarily these are going to be live. I'm going to say 90%. There's also the possibility that there are other things in there that are inert or replicas.
Okay, let me show you defendant's L10 now. And if you can describe, what room is this in PDQ?
That would be the coffee room.
Okay. And that's the coffee room. Now, is there any ammunition stored in
I
the
would
coffee
not want
room?
to drink coffee in there.
No.
Okay. I want to show you now L32. If you can tell the jury what this picture is.
That is the bathroom with blanks and
I feel like
appears to be at the very bottom is indicated live ammo of the gray bins.
And so you've got live ammo, and then on top of that, do you have blanks or dummies?
Those are all blanks.
So you've got them, and they're not in the same container in this picture, but you've got them all stacked up on each other, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And is that something that you would commonly do, is store this live ammo in the bathroom?
No, not commonly. It was just short on time and offloading the Sprinter, and got to put it somewhere quick and get back to Texas or California or whatever it might be.
Okay. Okay, Mr. Kinney, then I want to show you if you recognize defendant's L35. That's a box that says 45 LC. Do you recognize that?
Yes.
And what is that?
That is a box that that I populated with Thale Reed's 1883 Cowboy Training Camp live ammo.
Okay, now on that particular box itself, it's not marked live, is it?
No.
Okay. And so the rounds around it and in the box, do you know if these loose rounds are live?
I would assume that they are live.
Okay. Do you recall what defendant's L40 is?
Yeah, it's Thale Reed's green ammo box.
Okay. And that was found in PDQ crops.
Correct.
Yes, sir. Then I want to show you earlier, this is defendant's L43. Earlier, you talked about this photo. You remember that?
Yes, I do.
Okay. And I think you said that this was the dummies you had provided, correct?
Yeah, before polishing and populating in the white box provided to Sarah Zachary. Yes.
Okay. Now, as you look at this photo, this round up here, isn't that a blank?
Yeah, that's a spent blank.
And then how about this round right here, right where I'm pointing here?
That's another spent blank.
Okay. So this was not all dummies. This also had spent blanks in it.
Correct.
Now, the sheriffs did not seize this. They did not seize these at the time of the search. Were you aware
Correct.
of that?
Yes.
Okay. I want to show you defendants D. And if you tell the jury what this is,
That's a maintenance bench,
a bench to do what?
maintenance of firearms.
Okay. So this is where you maintain the firearms?
Yeah, there's gloves there, and you have some cleaning products. That would be one of them. Yes.
What are these rounds down here? They look like shotgun shells, but what are these?
From memory, that was a project on a previous film.
Okay, and then you have rounds in the back here. Do you know what those are?
I can't see
It's hard to see.
Okay, dummy. I see dummy blanks. Shall I circle it?
Yeah, thank you. Okay.
Right there. Yep. It says 45 ACP dummy blanks.
Now, when you say dummy blanks, is that another type of round, or are there dummies and blanks?
Instead of chambering a dummy round, it's better to chamber a dummy blank in inert one-piece extrusion, and it's a safer way of doing it. If we have call at some point in the action where somebody needs to chamber a round that is inert. Dummy rounds are problematic in semi-automatic and automatic firearms, and if upon repeated chambering, the components can come loose. So Joe Swanson came up with this invention, which is a dummy blank.
Dummy blank, okay. And what is these tools in the back, the yellow and green?
One is an Allen wrench set. The green one is a Torx set.
What do you use those for?
Again, it would just be, actually, the yellow handled ones are used commonly to attenuate the flash of semi-automatic and fully automatic weapons.
Defendants B, what is that equipment or device right here?
Those are a pair of vices, small vices.
Is that your gun maintenance table as well?
Yes, it is.
Now, defendants S, do you recognize that?
I do.
And is this your box as well?
It is.
Are those live rounds?
Yes. Well, the box, I remember writing 45 long Colt and thinking this is odd not to write dummy or blanks or specify what it is. It's 45 long Colt because it's 45 long Colt live. And I don't need to write live. It's just live.
45 long Colt. Okay.
Yeah.
And defendants V, can you tell the jury what that is?
Those are Joe Swanson blanks.
Defendants AA. Again, we have those Mauser boxes at the top of that font, and that's a Joe Swanson font. Is that right?
Those are definitely Joe Swanson boxes and fonts
Okay.
that I commonly see from him.
Okay. This is defendants Y. And again, let me show you the overall picture. But you see that?
Yes, I do.
Can you tell the jury what that is?
That's that same wooden shelf holding blank crowns.
Okay, and again, we have at the top these 300 blackout. Is that the Joe Swanson font?
It is.
Okay. And you see some of these boxes, they got the JS, like on the 9mm.
I see that. Yes.
Okay. That's what I was noticing before, but you said there on some of them and some of them.
I commonly, I notice, bless you, I see the JS, but if it's omitted, it's not, it's just not something I notice.
Okay, and I want to show you defendants X now. What is this picture?
That's that same wooden shelf.
Okay. And defendants W. Can you tell us what that is?
Yeah, that's the top of the black bookshelf that's adjacent to the wooden cabinet.
Okay, defendants Z. Can you tell us what that is?
Same wooden shelf.
Okay. What are the rounds on the right in this bin here?
Those are small bags of 25, more than likely it's 25 ACP and 32 ACP bags of blanks.
Okay. Defendants U, again, these tools.
It's the same Allen wrench set and Torx wrench on top of the maintenance table.
Okay, defendant CC. You see that?
I do.
And this box over here, is that a Joe Swanson?
It is.
Okay. And these spent shells, what are those? What caliber?
I can't tell from this photo.
Okay.
This is such a
Do you know what
long,
these spent shells are?
laboring process.
Here?
I don't recall.
Those are the kind of thing that can be reloaded, correct?
Yeah, unless a case is torn, it's become brittle and started to fracture, you can reload it.
This is defendant's T, and that's, is this the live ammo from 1883, that box?
It is.
Okay. Now I want to show you defendant's N27, and I'm going to show you that upright, but then I'm going to turn it around. Is that your writing on the blue box?
It is.
Okay. And defendant's N29, is that same box?
It is. It's one side or the other. Because, yeah, both have a label just like that.
Okay.
Both ends.
Okay. Now, a couple more questions on the prop truck that I forgot to ask you. When you were going there, do you recall telling Sarah to put a piece of tape over the safe?
Yes.
Okay. And what was the purpose of that?
Well, I wanted to make sure that nobody got into the safe before the law enforcement showed up.
One last series of questions on the
Oh,
disagreement that Hannah and Sarah had, you were talking about earlier, and that was over the negligent discharge. or accidental discharge, you called it? on
Acci-
16?
Accidental discharge, yes.
Okay, sir. Do you recall telling Hannah that Sarah was her boss and not to push it?
Yes.
You were basically telling her to back off, reporting anything. Shoot, I'm sorry. Jeez. Sorry, Judge. Siri picked up this thing. Do you recall telling Hannah something like to back off because she wanted to report to production?
It wasn't that she wanted to report it to production because Sarah had already reported it herself. That was the issue.
Okay. But in any event, you told her that she should just move on.
Yeah.
Okay, Your Honor, may I have just one moment? Okay.
Hopefully there aren't any more questions here. This has been such a long cross-examination.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Oh, Merry
Correct?
Christmas.
Yes, Your Honor.
Must be cold in the courtroom.
Mr. Kinney, is it your testimony that the 45 caliber live rounds at PDQ were reloads?
To my knowledge, yes.
And did any of those live rounds that were taken from PDQ have the same projectile shape as the projectile on the live rounds from the set of Rust?
No.
You spoke to Mr. Bowles. You indicated that you had of the live rounds that you took to the set of 1883. There were three projectile types. Is that correct?
It is.
Did all three of those types come back to PDQ?
Once we were I'm unaware because once we were done with the cowboy training camp, I never went into that box again, or even the smaller white boxes, into the gray bin or the smaller white boxes. So I didn't take an inventory after we were done.
And the gray bin.
Real quick, just because, thanks for the super chat. The only thing that could get Baldwin's finger off a trigger would be Anne Burrell's red Sharpie from Worst Cooks in America. Awesome.
That you had marked live ammo, was all of the live ammo that you had at PDQ inside that bin?
Yes. Excuse me. All the live ammo from 1883 was in that gray bin. There was self-defense rounds elsewhere within PDQ that were live. Not
And
45 long Colt though.
that's what I was going to ask. What caliber was your self-defense rounds?
357, 38 special, and 300 blackout.
Okay. Approximately how many firearms does PDQ own?
Hundreds.
Wow.
Do you keep all of them at the Albuquerque location?
No,
Do you have another location?
I do.
Where's that?
It's in Lake Havasu City, Arizona.
You were asked a series of questions about primed cases. Do you recall those questions?
Yes.
What is exactly a primed case?
The prime case is a case, could be a shotgun shell with just a primer, but we differentiate a prime case from a blank in that there's no additional charge of gunpowder to make a report, a noise, a bang, or a puff of smoke. And so it's a good training tool. It's a loud cap gun when it goes off. It helps initiate action on a set where there needs to be choreography of movement. And if you add talcum powder, it provides a bit of a puff to it.
So a primed case is just simply an empty brass, I'm going to suggest brass, I know it doesn't have to be brass, shell casing with a live primer. Is that right?
That's correct.
But it has no gunpowder.
No gunpowder.
And it has no projectile.
Definitely not. That would be a live round.
Can a primed case kill someone?
It can lead. Yes, it can. In a number of different ways.
How would that happen?
Well, in the Brandon Lee situation, a prime case initiation of the primer was enough to deliver the bullet, the projectile, into the barrel, causing what's called a squib load. And in that instance, what happened is the prop crew was unaware of what had happened. They emptied what were supposed to be dummy rounds, and they were not, because the live primer thus makes them something other than.
But let me ask you this. In order for a primed case to hurt someone in the manner that you're describing, such as the incident with Brandon Lee, there has to be a projectile somewhere, right?
Yes.
And in that case, there was a projectile lodged in the barrel of the gun.
Correct.
Okay. But the primed case itself, just the empty casing and the live primer, that's not going to kill anybody.
Highly doubtful that
Right.
it would cause injury. Yes.
Okay. You said that it sounds like a loud pop gun.
It sounds like a loud cap gun.
Cap gun, I'm sorry. Because the primer has a small amount of explosive substance, and it's that lights the gunpowder that emits the projectile, correct?
That's correct.
Real quick. Chi-Town native, thanks for the super chat. What a mess. How was he able to not get prosecuted also? WWRS, what would Runkle say? I don't know, actually. I'm not so sure, because Runkle might have some other thoughts on his organization style. I personally don't like it, but I don't know. Sometimes Ian can also surprise you. But that's a good thing to keep in mind is WWRS. What would Runkle say?
Were all of your 45 long Colt caliber live rounds that you had at PDQ, were they all taken by the Sheriff's Department?
Yes.
You were asked some questions about Starline brass casings. Is Starline brass a very common casing?
It's one of the primary sources of cases for Joe Swanson. But I've come to learn that even the Santa Fe County Sheriff's Department uses it as one of their duty ammos.
I want to talk to you a little bit about the package that you received from Ms. Gutierrez after she finished her work on the old way. You indicated that there were some leather belts, but you didn't inventory those.
That's correct.
Did you notice, were there appearing to be dummy rounds in those leather belts?
Yes.
Did you inventory those?
I did not.
Were those your property?
No.
When you received the package from Ms. Gutierrez, did it also include firearms?
Not in the box with the gun leather. There was at least one replica firearm within that box. In separate cases, I believe there are probably 2 Pelican type hardened cases that contain firearms as well as other replicas. And the box just containing the leather did not have firearms in it.
But you did receive a box from Ms. Gutierrez that she shipped to you from Montana that contained firearms. Is that right?
Correct. Yes.
And those were shipped to you because they were your firearms, right?
Some of them were, yes. Some of them were also sales.
Okay. When you received the box that contained the firearms, was there anything concerning about the state they were in?
Yes. The primary concern is that some of them were loaded.
Blue, why does she keep leaving half her direct for the redirect? It's infuriating. I agree. This is not my style of redirect. I mean, generally speaking, it's supposed to be like an inverted pyramid, right? Direct, you cover all kinds of stuff. Cross-examination is supposed to like come in a little bit. You can go into some topics that are contextual and whatnot to like, add some context to things that were discussed on direct. But like, then redirect is supposed to, address things really that only came up in the cross-examination, or to give context to things in the cross-examination. So redirect, redirect should really be a scalpel, in my opinion, right? Like you only address the few things that you need to, the places where the cross-examiner drew some blood, right? That are really like important things for you to shore up. Let's say there was a question that was very frustrating for the witness. They were forced to answer yes or no, but they really wanted to give more context to it, and you can just tell that there's a little bit more to the story. And so on redirect, you ask a question about like, okay, you were asked about this. What about XYZ? Like that just kind of gives them that space to answer in the full way that they had wanted to on cross-examination. It's things like that are best suited for redirect. She loves doing like a pseudo direct examination on redirect, which is very frustrating.
Mr. Kinney, you said that some of the guns were loaded.
Yes.
What were they loaded with?
What I found out that they were loaded with dummy rounds in the end.
And why was that concerning to you, that the guns had been shipped to you loaded with dummy rounds? So whenever you're ready, I'm ready. Okay.
Well, because the assumption is that one, guns are always loaded unless you verify that they are not, and two, that rounds are live unless you validate that they are dummy rounds. And the fact that a couple, I believe it was from memory, a couple of revolvers were loaded with rounds leads me to default that I have to assume these are live rounds until I validate that each and every one of the rounds are dummy rounds and that the guns are completely empty. So there was some sweaty palms that moment.
Okay. I'm going to shift gears here. I'm going to show you what is already in evidence as State's Exhibit 168. I want you to have a look at this photo and tell me if the projectile shapes that you described to Mr. Bowles are present in this photo.
It looks 99% are semi-wad cutter bullets. There's an oddball right in the middle of the photo.
Where can you use your screen? Oh, that's the oddball. Okay, sure.
Yeah, that has a projectile that I don't remember seeing. It's neither a semi-wad. There's they probably would consider that some variation of a wad cutter, but it almost looks like a truncated cone type projectile.
Okay, and you had, and truncated cones were one of the projectiles that you recall from 1883, correct?
Yeah, the cowboy training camp.
All right.
Yes.
I'm going to show you what's already in evidence. The State's Exhibit 171. How would you describe those?
That's another variation of a semi-wad cutter.
Okay. Would you consider that a truncated cone?
No.
All right. I'm going to show you what is already in evidence as State's Exhibit 57. Would these be a primed case?
Well, I can't see what's on the opposite end away from the nickel primer. Is there a projectile on the end?
For the purposes of this question, let's assume that there is no gunpowder in those casings and there is no projectile at the other end.
Yeah, I would call these a spent case because the primers have been hit. But at the same time, we have to assume that any primer is potentially live, even though it's been struck, because it could be a hard primer. But easily, commonly, if somebody, the layman took a look at this picture and said, well, what is that? I would say a spent case casually. But I would not make a dummy round out of that.
Sure. In order for a primed case to be a primed case, it has to have an unstruck primer, correct?
Yes, and we assume that it's not an inert prime case. If we're saying, what are we need to initiate some kind of action with the least amount of noise, I would call up Joe Swanson and say, I need a box of 50 prime cases.
Okay. But those don't appear to be that to you, do they?
They don't. I don't know what that is, to be honest with you. It could be in the providing weapons and blanks and dummy rounds to production for film. I don't know what that is. I mean, casually, I would say if I was just a shooter out there, I would say, no, it's a spent case.
Right. It looks like a spent casing.
Yeah.
All of the dummies that you provided to the set of Rust, the 45 long Colt dummies that came directly from you, did all of them rattle?
Yes.
Did you provide any dummy rounds to the set of Rust that did not rattle?
I did.
Which ones were those?
Those were the 44 Henry copper plated rounds.
And those are completely different looking than than any of the 45 long Colt dummies, correct?
Correct. They haven't made 44 Henry since the pre-1900.
So the 44 Henrys, how do you know that those are dummies?
Well, they don't make them anymore, and
how do you know they're dummies if they don't rattle?
It's a problem. You assume that they're live. Then
is there a hole in the side? How do you know it's a dummy?
You don't. That's a problem.
There's no hole in the side.
There's no hole in the side.
Do you know whether or not? Did you say they were 4470s?
44 Henry.
44 Henry. Do you know whether any of the 44 Henrys were ever even used on the set of Rust?
No.
You don't know?
No. And to be clear, the 44 Henrys don't have a traditional primer. You cannot reload them. They're like a 22 rimfire. It's the same thing. It's just an oversized version of that.
All right. You were asked some questions about how many times you called Detective Hancock. Why did you call her so many times?
Just to aid in the investigation, whatever she needed, or if I found something that I thought she might want to see, or if I had any questions. It was routine for us to be in communication.
Okay. You made a statement on cross-examination that you didn't want to work, I think it was in a text message maybe, that you didn't want to work with Ms. Gutierrez in the future. Is that correct? Do you recall making that statement?
Yeah. I'd say
Okay.
yes.
Why didn't you want to work with her in the future?
Well, the issue of loading a full load blank with a horse in the vicinity is a huge violation of an armorer's work.
So why don't you explain to the jury what you're talking about? Because I don't think that we've addressed that issue yet. Was there an issue that came to your attention with regard to the set animals and a full load blank?
There was several days prior, and I don't know exactly when it happened. Sarah Zachary called to discuss a number of things, including her concern.
And I'm gonna stop you right there.
Oh,
I got it.
yep.
Did you receive information that there was an issue with a full load blank and an animal?
Yes.
Okay, stop there. Generally speaking, explain to the jury what types of blanks are to be used around animals, what types are not, and why, having nothing to do with what happened on Rust.
In general, we have several iterations of blank loads, and the idea is that we always want to use the least amount of noise and gunpowder for the effect necessary. And so if ultimately we could get away with using nothing but a prime case, that would be ideal.
Sir, in terms of blanks, what are the appropriate size blanks to use around horses on a movie set?
Horses and kids, no greater than 1/4 load.
So is there a blank load that is less than a 1/4 load?
There is 1/8 as well. Yes.
Okay. Why is it not advisable to use full load blanks around set animals?
Well, it's frankly, it's considered animal cruelty.
This is also not relevant so far at this point. The Dementor, thanks so much for your super chat. Is the prosecutor's style of redirect improper? How can defense address new testimony that didn't come in during during direct? I mean, they do have a little bit of leeway because, like I said, they can talk about stuff to contextualize things that came up on direct. They can talk about stuff that is necessary for their own their own claims, their own defenses and things like that. But usually it's going to be related to something that comes up on direct. In terms of is it improper for the prosecutor to do this kind of redirect? I think it kind of depends on the judge and what their sort of standards are. I mean, some judges are going to be very specific about what you can and can't get into, I suppose, but this one less so. She's definitely got a standard for we just do direct, cross, and redirect. But I will say there have been some times that the longer redirect has resulted in a recross. So, and the judge has allowed that because it's
okay, Mr. Kinney, we're
only
going to
fair.
move on. You were asked some questions about making dummy rounds into live rounds. Do you recall those questions from Mr. Bowles?
I do.
So it sounds like that would be a bit of a complicated process. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely.
Let's talk about the opposite. Would it be considerably easier to turn a live round into a dummy?
It would be not. It would be. It's not the ideal situation, again, especially if we're talking about.
I'm not asking what's ideal. I'm asking, would it be easier?
There's one less step. Well, no, actually we're excluding, you'd have to press out the primer. It's less complicated.
So if one were to try to turn live rounds into dummy rounds, would they need any special equipment?
They would need full reloading.
I'm just asking you if they would need special
Yes.
equipment.
Yes.
Is
See,
one
this is like a decent way of gaining control over a witness who just likes to talk. Is, you know, sometimes you have to interrupt them with your question again. Jerry Roth, to answer your question, are lawyers allowed to tell the witness when to stop talking? Yeah, if they're not answering the question, cut them off and re-ask the question, or ask it in a way that you know, emphasizes the fact that you just asked this question and that they're not answering it, you know, or clarify what your question is so that you sort of put them back on the proper path. There are you know, definitely times when you can do that.
of the pieces of equipment that they might need an inertia puller.
The bullet puller, yes. A kinetic puller would be one of them, yes.
All right, thank you. You were asked some questions about your training of Ms. Zachary. Did you train Ms. Zachary specifically on how to handle a single action army revolver?
No.
You were shown a series of photos and asked about Joe Swanson labels. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Mr. Balls, you want to come up here real quick?
Okay, let's get some questions here. Jerry Roth, can Seth Kenney be charged with perjury during a trial? Any witness can hypothetically be charged with perjury, but it's got to be a really, really big lie, provably, demonstrably wrong, that kind of thing. It's perjury is not often brought. Jeff Postman, where would you draw the line between criminal negligence and ordinary negligence in terms of Hannah's conduct? I'll answer this.
I'm going to show Mr. Kinney States Exhibits 193 through 208, and I don't believe there's an objection, and I would ask for permission to publish.
No objection, Your Honor.
Page 193.
To what? 208
208.
is admitted, you may publish.
Now, Mr. Kinney, for the purposes of these questions, I want you to think back to the photo that you saw of the Joe Swanson box that was taken from the set of Rust. Do you recall the photo I'm talking about? If not, I'll show it to you again.
The one on the prop cart, just to be clear.
Yes,
Yes?
the dummies,
Yes.
Joe Swanson dummies,
Yes.
with the JS in the middle.
Yes.
And you indicated that you have never had a box that had that kind of label.
Correct.
So,
Specifically 45 long Colt.
well, let's go through them. States Exhibit 193, are those labels just like the one from the set of Rust?
Well, no.
Right, that's not a trick question.
Seems like
How about these? States Exhibit 194, are those just like the ones from the set of Rust?
no.
Same question here, 195. We've got several boxes. If you need me to zoom in on anything, I'm happy to.
No. It's yes. No, I don't. Need you to zoom.
Are any of those the same as the box from Rust?
No.
These, are any of these the same as the box from Rust?
No.
How about these?
No.
And that's, for the record, States Exhibit 197. States Exhibit 198, how about these?
No.
States Exhibit 199, how about these?
No.
States Exhibit 200, same question.
No.
States Exhibit 201, same question.
No.
States Exhibit 202, over on the left, same question.
No.
States Exhibit 203, same question.
No.
State's Exhibit 204.
No.
State's Exhibit 205.
No.
State's Exhibit 206.
No.
State's Exhibit 207.
No.
State's Exhibit 208.
No.
You testified that you provided some fake guns for Rust. Is that right?
Yes. Replica guns. Yes.
Did you provide any fake long guns for the set of Rust?
No.
I don't have anything else. Thank you.
Oh, thank goodness.
Can I have 2 follow-up?
Yep.
All right.
This probably deserves a recross.
Mr. Kenny, just 2 follow-up. With regard to turning a live into a dummy, you talked about one piece of equipment. What other equipment would you need to do that?
Well, you need a piece of equipment to press out the primer. You'd need, a press and reload it and install it with a proper reloading dies. You would need some way of measuring powder as well, potentially dispensing the powder. And then you need a piece of equipment to load the primer into the case.
Okay. Now, I think you testified that you didn't train Sarah Zachary on the use of the single action revolver,
Correct.
and she was under your license. So was she not permitted to use that?
No, she was permitted.
Okay. Even without the training?
Well, a cold gun, it's a good question. I don't recall going over, I just don't remember training her to check for safe on a single action army. I think, the thinking is Hannah's the armor. She's going to take care of it.
Okay. But you did train her with regard to, you did certify her on your paperwork.
Well, there's no certification.
Okay. Not certification, but you did have her on your paperwork.
Correct.
Okay.
All right, you're excused.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Next
I are
witness.
1 minute to go check the list.
going to check it twice. Ira Potato Brain, thanks for the super chat. From what I can gather, the live rounds came in when Hannah went shooting with the prop guns without permission, as far as I know.
The state will briefly recall Corporal Hancock.
Oh,
Jurors, you're doing okay? Do you need a bathroom break yet? Okay, Sorter, somebody?
Alexandria Hancock.
I can't hear you.
Mr. Judge, raise your right hand.
Do you swear affirm under penalty of law that the testimony you'll give in this case will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you.
Let me get some questions here real quick, just to make sure I don't get too far behind on those, and then we'll get right back to testimony. Jeff Postman, where would you draw the line between criminal negligence and ordinary negligence in terms of Hannah's conduct? So in this case, this is basically talking about negligence with a firearm. Like that's what it is. So you can analyze it in the same way that you can analyze any other negligence case. It's just it's involving a firearm, and that's what allows them to essentially criminalize it. I hope that you I hope that clears up your question for you. Doctor Who 8675309. Do you think Seth's hair is real? Yeah, I think so. There's nothing about that seems to indicate any sort of fakeness there. Amanda, who is Joe Swanson again? He's apparently like the top supplier of ammunition for movie sets, film sets. So like internationally, supposedly, according to Seth Kenny. So he's the guy that basically made all of the munitions that ended up on the Rust set. Okay. Moving on down, HKR. I don't get why Legalbytes was so impressed by this judge. She does not run a tight house. I will say that my impression was it came from what I saw at the most recent hearing before trial began. She was much more of a tight judge with the two attorneys and made rulings that were very clear, very decisive, and I really liked that. I will say ever since trial has begun, I've had a little bit of a different impression. Of course, last week's Snipe Fest was a big factor in that. Kat loved Dreaming Peach, but why is she allowed to get away with asking questions that are not redirect? I don't know exactly what the discussions have been in terms of like the rules on that. It probably actually really comes down to objections by the defense. So, if something is outside the scope of cross-examination, you can object and talk about that and then get a ruling from the judge on it. But if you don't object, judge might not care to step in. Santa Rosa Joe, why doesn't the defense mention the witness's plea deal? Well, this witness was never charged, so he never had to take any kind of a plea deal. Immunity would have been the thing to talk about, I suppose. But I don't know. I imagine he probably has immunity. I don't know why it didn't seem to come up. Blue, does Alec have different defense lawyers? Yes, he has very, very high-powered big law attorneys that are likely to have a lot of attorneys working on the whole case, billing all kinds of hours. So expect to see, cross-examinations with impeachments that actually show the receipts, for example. I would expect a much higher caliber performance from the defense than what we're seeing in this trial, partly because that's what he can afford. Right. The G slide. Can the public request a revoking of the immunity? No. This is it essentially becomes like a contractual agreement between the two parties, between the state and the witness. As an example, Bill Cosby ended up being convicted of sex crimes because of testimony that he gave in his civil case. However, he gave that testimony because he was told by the DA that they would not prosecute him if he chose to testify in that civil case. However, after that DA was replaced by a new DA, the new DA said, I don't have to honor that, and decided to charge him. He ended up being found guilty, and then he ended up appealing. That's how he ended up winning on his appeal, because the court said it doesn't matter that it's a new person sitting in the DA's spot. That is essentially like a contractual agreement that the two parties have agreed to. You can't just renege on that. So that's essentially like kind of how that works. All right, folks. With that, let's get back to the testimony. Hopefully this is not redundant, because I mean, we heard from Ms. Popple again today. That was it there was like nothing new there from her. So I'm hoping that there's something interesting and new that they ask her about that helps to move the ball forward in one direction or another.
George, I think this was. You ready now? Okay, go ahead.
Corporal, thank you for your second round on the witness stand. As a sworn law enforcement officer, are you familiar with the crime of negligent use of a firearm? Yes. And what are the different ways that the elements of negligent use of a firearm can be fulfilled?
Yeah, can we approach?
Yes.
Mark Molina, this is an interesting point. Alec's trial should have happened first, so Hannah could have copied Alex's lawyers, or Alec's lawyers. The thing is that the defense doesn't have any control over that. That came from the order in which they ended up being charged, which I suspect is one of the reasons why the prosecutors ended up removing Alec Baldwin's charges for a while and then recharged him later on. Probably because they specifically wanted this trial to happen first, and then and then to proceed to Alec Baldwin's trial. Okay. Let's get through this sidebar. All right. Continuing on. This is a long one. Okay.
All rise.
Or are they are they taking the jury out? Oh. Interesting. So this is maybe going to be a more extensive sidebar. I'll be honest, I did not hear. Okay. I did not hear the question, so I'm going to go back for the question and then I'll come back for it again.
Of negligence. Are you, your corporal? Thank you for your second round on the witness stand. As a sworn law enforcement officer, are you familiar with the crime of negligent use of a firearm?
Yes.
And what are the different ways that the elements of negligent use of a firearm can be fulfilled?
Oh, yeah. That's incredibly problematic. Yes, good objection. And now we can probably go up to live.
We kind of
Oh.
consider looking.
No, we can't.
That
Hang on. Okay, real quick here. Also, John O'Rourke, thank you so much for gifting 5 Legalbytes memberships. Very kind and generous of you. Jessica Fry, Tag, Jesse Black, Thirsty, Mark Molina, and MB. You have all been gifted memberships by John O'Rourke. So welcome or welcome back to Bite Club. Very happy to have you guys here. And thanks, John. Okay. So it's just because it's basically asking, so is that asking for a legal conclusion or asking for her to give the jury instructions? It's kind of doing a little bit of both. I mean, it's the jury instructions are something that the two sides are going to have to agree upon before presenting them to the jury. This is like one of the most important things that the two sides are going to fight over, and it doesn't happen in front of the jury for good reason. It can when you're on the outside of it, it can feel very boring to watch it, but it's so important. And so the two sides, like I said, are going to fight over this kind of stuff. You can't just ask some police officer to provide like what the elements are of negligent negligent use of a firearm, and like to give her own analysis of it. Like she's not a lawyer, she's not a member of the jury. This is like incredibly improper for so many reasons. So yeah, incredibly improper. But let's see what the judge says. 5 seconds.
All right, Corporal, we're going to move on.
Yes.
Were you present in the courtroom?
That's because that was 100% improper. So defense properly won on that objection. I don't understand. Like, was she? The only thing that I can think of is, Morrissey, for all of my complaints about Morrissey, this prosecutor, generally speaking, she's really on top of her stuff, and she's very knowledgeable. She's very energetic in the courtroom, very assertive in the courtroom, even aggressive sometimes, whether you like it or not. Sometimes it can be a great thing. Sometimes it's, it can be off-putting to some people. But that's not something that like she made a mistake on. I have a feeling that she was just trying to see if the defense was awake. That was my impression of like what she did there. One of the things about her is she kind of can be a little bit dirty in some of the strategies that she employs. So I kind of have a feeling that was a little bit intentional. Okay, let's get to it. I see some questions here. I'm going to save those. I'll answer those once I can.
When Mr. Haig was doing his demonstration with his single action army?
Yes, I was.
And as a trained law enforcement officer, are you proficient in firearms?
Fairly proficient.
Have you been able to access that gun that Mr. Haig was using for his demonstration today?
Yes.
And did you attempt to view the barrel of the gun without removing the cylinder?
Yes.
Were you successful?
Yes.
You were?
Well, sorry, in looking at it, yes, but not fully.
Okay, so why don't you explain to the jury what you did in order to try to do a barrel check for debris or items in the barrel without removing the cylinder?
Okay. So with the revolver that Mr. Haig had brought in, what I did was essentially I took the hammer to half cock, which would allow that cylinder to spin freely. So then I tried to look down the barrel, kind of from the side of that revolver. You can see a little bit of light shining through it, but you cannot fully see like an unobstructed barrel view when you're looking down it. So it's essentially what I would kind of consider looking like at a corner. So you're not really able to see, parts of that corner. Next, I pulled the hammer fully back all the way to see if you could see where the firing pin goes into that cylinder. So I tried to look down that way to see if I could see the entirety of the barrel. Again, that hole it's too small. I could see light shining through, but not enough to where I could say that the barrel was, completely empty, or that I would be confident enough to say that there wasn't anything in the barrel. And then the last thing that I did uncomfortably is I actually took that revolver and with it at the full cock position, I actually looked down the barrel of that gun and used a light source because it was really hard to see in it with it being, it's dark, it's a darker barrel. So I looked, actually had that barrel pointing at my face, and to try to look down it, too dark to see it just normally. So I used a light source to try to look down. But again, when you're shining that light source down the barrel, you're having to move in different directions. So personally, I wouldn't comfortably say that that the barrel would be free of anything like debris or any sort of particles in those checks.
All right, thank you. Shifting gears, are you familiar with the name Brian Norvell?
Yes.
And do you know whether or not he was interviewed in this case?
Yes.
You know, or he was?
He was.
Okay. And were the defense attorneys present for that interview?
Yes, they were.
Have you listened to the entire interview?
Yes, I have.
Did the defense, and let me ask you, in terms of let's go back to State's Exhibit 2, in terms of Mr. Benavidez's video, who is Brian Norvell on that video?
So in that lapel video, Brian Norvell is the individual that brings that prop cart over in front of the patrol unit to Lieutenant Benavidez. And he's the same individual that reaches his hand over the crime scene tape to pick something up off the cart.
Approximately how long was the interview that you listened to?
It was about an hour and 45 minutes, give or take.
Did anyone from the defense ask Mr. Norvell any questions?
No.
Were you present in the courtroom when Mr. Bowles asked Mr. Kinney approximately how many times he called you? And I think Mr. Kinney agreed it was approximately 40 times.
Yes.
How many times did Mr. Bowles call you?
Quite a bit. Not just calls, but also emails and text messages.
Would you say it was more than 40 times?
I'd say at least around there.
And how many times have I called you?
A handful, maybe between 5 and 10.
All right, thank you. I'll pass the witness. Oh, sorry.
Cross-exam. Okay, let's see here. There are some questions, I believe. Okay, well, I got those in a bit.
Cross-exam.
Thank you, Hannah. Now, Corporal Hancock, isn't it true that I'm representing Ms. Gutierrez-Reed in this case, and I called you and emailed you in that capacity?
Yes.
And Seth Kinney, on the other hand, is a potential suspect in the case, right?
According to who?
Well, you're the investigator. Did you ever look at him as a potential suspect?
Yeah, he was investigated.
Okay, so that's what I'm asking you. Do you normally talk to potential suspects that many times in a case?
I don't think there's a limit to how much we talk to them.
With regard to the barrel obstruction you looked at, and you did that, you're not an expert in inspecting firearms.
No.
And you said you're fairly proficient, but you don't know, for example, the tools that are used. You didn't have a tool with you?
No, that was just by eye.
Okay. So you just did kind of a
Pointing
casual
the barrel at her face.
attempt, but you're not an expert at doing that, are you?
I tried to replicate the way that was said that the barrel checks were done.
Well, you didn't have a tool. You just said that.
Correct.
And did you do this outside?
It was done inside.
Yeah, and are you aware the light is quite a bit different when you do it outside?
Correct.
So you said even doing it inside under less favorable lighting conditions, you were still able to see some light coming through it, correct?
Yes.
And you didn't replicate it outside, did you?
No, that's why I used a light source.
Okay, and you knew this was being done outside on the rust side.
I would assume so, but
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure it was done inside as well.
Well, you don't know that.
Correct.
So you're assuming. So your demonstration did not repeat the same conditions either that were done on the rust side, did it?
Again, I can't say the exact way that it was done on rust.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Next witness.
State calls Mike Primo.
Okay. And actually, once again, before we get him started, let's get these questions here just to make sure I stay on top of them. Okay, let's see here. Stephen Horton, why are the jury instructions not given at the start so they know exactly what to look for? Well, I mean, this is why the opening statements are so important is that you've got both sides that are framing the story into their own narrative, their own sort of universe of understanding the facts that they're going to understand. That's really all they need in order to properly figure out like where to file away this information, where to, what to look for, what to ignore, what's important, what's not important. And so that's really like that's why like I stress the importance of the opening statement. And the prosecution really had, in my opinion, a terrible opening statement because of the fact that they just sort of did what is going to happen to the jury at trial anyway, which is throwing all this information at them without a mechanism for organizing that information in their brains. Now, the problem with jury instructions is that they're very long to sit through. And especially if you don't have them written down in front of you, sometimes people's eyes can start to glaze over. It is much better to get that framework in the form of an opening statement because it's in a narrative format. It's in a way of giving people a roadmap, of giving people, like I said, just like an overall framework for understanding things. So yeah, so that's that's a big reason why. Jamie Bruce, if something is obviously improper, is it incumbent on the other side to prove that it's improper to the judge, or will the judge just rule on that themselves? I think it depends on like what exactly you mean by improper. I mean, if you mean like stepping outside of the scope on redirect, generally speaking, yeah, it's going to be up to the other side to object. Some judges will get involved on their own, and sometimes it depends on how egregious it is for the judge to do it. But otherwise, judges generally speaking expect the attorneys to do their jobs, and the judge is going to do his or hers. Doctor Who 8675309, at the pace this is going at, I'm not sure this is going to the jury at the end of the week. You'd be surprised. I mean, sometimes the defense, the defense here could have a 2-day case in chief. I can totally see that happening here. I've seen it before in other cases where the vast majority of it was the prosecution's case in chief. Keep in mind, they're the ones with the burden of proof. Defense is going to want to be using a lot of the same witnesses as the state anyway. So a lot of the stuff that they should be wanting to try to get in is going to be getting in, just on cross-examination. The G slide, can lawyers be held accountable for dirty tactics in the courtroom? Sure, they can. I mean, it usually depends on like just how dirty it is. Jerry Roth, can't lawyers who fight dirty be reprimanded? It can happen. It definitely can, especially, like I said, the egregiousness of it matters. Jerry Roth, could defense call the corporal a hostile witness? Well, that's so anytime someone is cross-examining a witness, the default is they're a hostile witness, right? Because the definition of a hostile witness is this is somebody who is whose interests are opposed to yours. So by definition, when you're cross-examining a witness, that witness has been called by the other side. The other side is calling them because they're helping their case. Generally speaking, it's not always the case, but calling a witness a hostile witness usually will happen when somebody has put someone on direct examination, their own witness, and at some point that witness is just being combative, not being very helpful, and so you can request to call them a hostile witness, giving you the ability to ask more sort of leading questions, so that you can kind of just actually perform an examination of this witness. But it's got to be like a case where it's pretty clear that that's what's happening. Okay.
You stand before the judge, raise your hand.
Do you swear or affirm under penalty of law that the testimony you'll give in this case will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right, have a seat, talk into the microphone. Do you need any water?
Thank you, Your Honor. Floor would be great, thank you.
Good afternoon, sir. Would you state your full name for the record, please?
Good afternoon. Michael Allen Primo.
Mr. Primo, how are you currently employed?
I am employed through a company called Primo Forensics, where I am a partner. The firm specializes in the analysis of digital multimedia evidence, so audio recordings, video recordings, and image recordings used in litigation.
Can you summarize for the ladies and gentlemen of the jury your education and background and experience in this field?
Sure. So I began my education and training with the University of Lawrence Technological University in Southfield, Michigan. I obtained a bachelor's in audio engineering technology. From there, I started getting training from LEVA, which is the Law Enforcement and Emergency Services Video Association. I pursued LEVA training 1 through 4 and became a certified forensics video technician. I've also received training in the products for image and video enhancement through one of the popular vendors is Amped, as well as Input Ace, formerly known as Axon Investigate. I've also received training from Leica in the analysis and use of 3D laser scanning technology, Medex Forensics, which is another forensic tool used to authenticate multimedia evidence. And I think that covers it.
Do you belong to any professional or scientific organizations?
I do. I'm currently a member of SWIGDE, which is the Scientific Working Group on Digital Evidence. They're an organization that generates best practices in digital multimedia forensics, as well as digital forensics. So audio forensics, video forensics, image forensics, computer forensics, which includes cell phone forensics. And then they also have a quality committee that handles the quality control for digital forensics. I'm currently serving as the video chair with the video committee. I'm also a member of the Audio Engineering Society, the International Association for Identification, and LEVA.
And sir, can you, how long have you been in this field?
I've been practicing for a little over 10 years now.
And during that time, who have some of your clients been or parties that you've assisted?
So I've worked for both sides of the court on criminal as well as civil cases. So both the defense as well as the plaintiff for civil cases, and for criminal cases, the prosecution and the defense. I've contracted for the DOD, the DOJ, the FBI, the FDA, and several attorney general's offices. So a lot of attorneys.
And specifically, have you been qualified as an expert in the areas of audio or video and image forensics?
Yes, I have.
How many times have you been qualified as an expert in those areas?
I have given testimony as an expert a little over a dozen times in various courts throughout the United States. And then I've also provided deposition testimony, probably about the same, maybe a little more.
Your Honor, I would ask the court to recognize Mr. Primo as an expert in the areas of audio, video, and image forensics.
Any objection?
No objection.
All right, so you are recognized as an audio, video, image forensics expert.
Thank you, Your Honor. Can everyone hear me okay? I feel like I'm not talking directly into the microphone. That's a little better. Thank you.
The acoustics in the room are a little strange.
Okay, it's good to know.
How did you become involved in this case?
We were contacted initially to examine several sources of digital images that were captured from a variety of devices by Ms. Morrissey.
And Did you prepare a report?
Yes, I did.
And was your work peer reviewed?
Yes, my work was technically peer reviewed by a colleague of similar qualifications.
And is that what peer review means? You give it to someone else in the field and they double check your work?
That's correct, to ensure the accuracy of the application of the methodology, as well as the opinions offered. It's recommended that reports are technically peer reviewed by a colleague that has similar qualifications.
Okay. I'm going to show you some exhibits. We're going to get ourselves set up. Mr. Bowles, do you want to come up here and have a look? Let's hold off on that one for just a second.
Got some questions here while we wait. Cat Love Dreaming Peach. Halyna, how many witnesses do you think defense will call? I don't know, but I could see them, like I said earlier, I could see them doing like a 2-day case in chief. The G slide. Beyond this case in particular, how often does a witness who has clearly perjured themselves get held to account for said false testimony? Thanks for sharing your expertise, you rock. Oh, thank you so much. Not often. Not often. You know, witnesses get impeached all the time for some sort of inaccuracy, whether it was intended or not intended. And it's like you're not going to get charged with perjury just because there was some kind of inconsistency in your testimony. It's got to be pretty egregious.
All right. Mr. Primo, I am showing you what is already admitted into evidence as State's Exhibit 118. Do you recognize that?
Yes, I do.
And is this an image that I provided you to do some enhancement on?
It appears so, yes.
And is there a particular part of this image that you were asked to enhance or clarify?
Yes, so the area specific.
George, will you show him how he can touch and clear?
Okay, so this is a touch screen.
Let's see if I can do this. That works. So the arrow indicates the section of the image that was the focus of the request, which appears to be some sort of ammunition for enhancement as well as enlargement of the image.
Okay, I'm going to show you what I have marked as State's Exhibit 178, and I would ask the court to admit it, and I would ask for permission to publish.
No objection.
State 178 is admitted. You may publish.
Mr. Primo, can you explain to the jury what we're looking at in State's Exhibit 178?
Sure. So the tool that was used primarily throughout the course of the investigation is called AMP5, which is a audio or an image and video analysis tool, not audio analysis, with which when you bring the image into the tool, it performs a non-destructive workflow that allows us to clarify or identify specific regions of the imagery, which is shown on the right-hand side of the screen as the clarified identification for the version that was enhanced. Clarification and enhancement kind of are synonymous with the legal admissibility. The image on the left is a specific filter arrangement in the tool that allows us to compare what was originally cropped or selected and then what was clarified, what processes were applied. So we can see, in accordance with best practices, what exactly happened between the two components, the two sections that were cropped.
So
Real quick, John O'Rourke, thanks for the super chat. Does Hannah's attorney normally practice real estate law? I heard that. I don't know for sure. I haven't looked up his law firm, but I will check it out before tomorrow. Before tomorrow's trial stream, because I know that folks he's practiced a number of areas of law, is my understanding, but to include litigation, so just not criminal law.
When you attempted to clarify the image, is there a reason that you weren't able to make it less blurry?
So I applied a de-blur, several de-blurring processes to try to clear up that blurriness that you're seeing in the image. And they were unsuccessful at being able to accurately make it so that it was perfectly in focus again. So there were likely a number of reasons as to why that portion of the imagery became blurry. So light level adjustments were applied. If memory serves, sharpening, which improves the edge detail against different edges. And then of course, enlargement or resizing of the image.
And sir, the fact that this portion of the image that I asked you to take a close look at, the fact that that is in the background of the photo, how does that affect things?
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, if I go back to is the ammunition in the foreground of the photo or the background?
It's in the background, yes.
How does that affect whether it's blurry or not, if it does?
It doesn't necessarily affect it from a clarification perspective. It wasn't so far out of blur that I would consider it unreliable to make determinations from. We can still see a lot of information in that background. It wasn't like those objects were several hundred feet or even further away from the focus of the camera. But that being further back in the scene does complicate our ability to de-blur it effectively.
And is that because they are blurry in the original image?
Yes, they're out of focus on some level, yes.
All right. I'm going to go back to States Exhibit 178. Just by looking at the images, are you able to, do you notice different colors of metal in the center of what appears to be ammunition?
I don't
I
like
do,
that.
yes.
What are those colors?
The colors appear to be visually dissimilar.
Asking you to
Oh,
look
what the
for
heck?
and try to
Hang on.
enhance.
Why do you do that again? Okay, hang on. All right. Is this where we were?
Is a audio or an image and video analysis tool, not audio analysis, with which when you...
The center of what appears to be ammunition.
I do, yes.
I don't particularly like this. I think when it comes to using original and then clarified images, there is stuff that you start to get into some potential speculation here. I mean, he is an expert witness, so, but it's like you can see color differences between the two in addition to it being clarified, right? Like this is more of an orangish gold or orangish copper, I guess, and this is more of a yellowish. I don't know. That can be problematic when we're starting to talk about color differences and things like that. This makes me uncomfortable, to be honest with you.
What are those colors?
The colors appear to be visually dissimilar in terms of color as well as light. The area depicted here as with the arrow, the center part, my understanding is that it's some sort of primer of that ammunition component, is a darker region than the area that's depicted by this arrow on the right, which is brighter.
Okay, thank you, sir. And I'm showing you what is already in evidence as States Exhibit 162, where you provided this image for clarification and forensic work.
Yes, I was.
And was there a particular part of this image that I asked you to focus on?
Yes. So the section identified by the arrow here is the section of the screen that was of interest for clarification, so enhancement, as well as resizing or enlargement of that imagery.
And were you able to enlarge and clarify that image?
Yes, that section of the image was suitable for clarification, and then exhibits were generated, enlarged. In the compare and original format that we saw earlier, where it's the side-by-side, as well as a picture-in-picture style within the tool AMP5.
How do you know whether or not the image is appropriate for clarification?
There are several components that we evaluate when we receive the images. Things like, are the objects high enough resolution or pixels? So every picture is made up of lots of little squares that are pixels. And if the resolution of that picture is limited, then the enlargement process could produce inaccurate results for clarifying or making that image bigger. In addition, the position of those objects within the scene, the light level of that scene. So is the image too dark that we can't actually restore or enhance those sections to make them more visible to the human eye? As well as things like compression, image compression or data compression, which can reduce the amount of information that was originally captured by the device or introduce information that wasn't originally there. So we evaluate all of these components prior to engaging with an enhancement and applying that enhancement methodology, which was ultimately reported back to Ms. Morrissey prior to beginning.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to show you what I have marked as States Exhibit, is it 176? Your Honor, for the record, Mr. Bowles does not have an objection to any of these exhibits. So I would ask that 176 be admitted into evidence and obviously for publishing.
176 is admitted. You may publish.
Mr. Primo, what are we looking at here?
This is a clarified exhibit that depicts that region of interest, which is demonstrated in the lower right-hand corner, that has been enhanced using sharpness, light level adjustments, as well as it's a picture-in-picture style, but a zoom, if you will, of the area of interest, which is the ammunition and it appears to be some sort of container.
Thank you. This is States Exhibit 177. I'd like to move it into evidence and publish it.
No objection, Your Honor.
177 is admitted. You may publish.
Mr. Primo, can you describe what we're looking at here?
This is a demonstrative exhibit that shows the original frame picture that was processed or clarified on the left-hand side of the screen, which has been, if memory serves, rotated slightly so that we can better see it within this exhibit. Light level adjustments, so shadow and highlight improvements, sharpening, and then enlargement of the pixel region. So that's the original version, and then on the right-hand side, all of those processes were applied. A side-by-side exhibit.
Are you able to see, just by using your eyes, a slight difference in the color of the primers of the ammunition on the top area of that styrofoam insert and the ammunition here in this lower section?
Yes. So these two things that we're evaluating are visually dissimilar. Oh. In terms of light and color.
And while you have testified that you can see the difference, are there some
know about that
things that you can do in order to verify that that they are actually different colors?
There are some tests that we can apply to analyze that information on a deeper level, which is at its core evaluating how the technology works. So in this case, it was some sort of Apple device, iOS device, and whether or not that information that was being collected by the electronics within that device was being accurately communicated to that digital format. So there's a test that I applied throughout the analysis. On this particular image, I was not confident in my ability to do so.
To verify it.
Correct. To verify that those tonal values, those color and luma values are in fact dissimilar.
So just to be clear, your testimony is you can see the difference, but you're not able to digitally verify it.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, this testimony so far does not feel like it's helpful one way or
For a
another.
video, and of course, unfortunately, that requires me to change devices.
All right, so we're gonna have
Thank you
some
for your patience.
more tech delay.
Okay.
Yeah, this testimony so far is not moving the needle for me. It's feeling somewhat cumulative, but it's not making it more compelling for the state. You either believe their theory of the silver primers being a sign of live rounds, or you don't at this point. Daniel Bornhold, question: does the prosecution have a budget to stick to? They do. They had to request the state for money for this. The DA, the Santa Fe District Attorney, requested more than $635,000 from the state in emergency funding for these trials, but she ended up getting like half that. It was, where was that? It was something like like $317,000, which, I mean, it sounds like a lot, but between the two trials, it's not that
I'd like
much.
to play what has been marked as State's Exhibit 187. Your Honor, the foundation for these videos was laid by the gentleman from Production Outfitters, and I would ask for permission to publish. Sorry, 187.
No objection, Your Honor.
All right, 187 is admitted. You may publish.
Sir, were you asked to review a couple of videos and take those videos and enhance still frames within the videos?
Yes, I think it was, if memory serves, more than a couple, but yes.
Okay. This is State's Exhibit 187. Do you recognize this video?
I do, yes.
And is this one of the videos that you digitally enhanced for me?
That is correct.
You know, and quite frankly, I understand that we can't hear it, but whatever is being said is not relevant. So I'm not going to spend too much time on the audio. Okay.
Okay, understood.
And what specifically were you asked to do with regard to this video? What was I asking you to look for and try to enhance?
The pixel regions are the areas depicting the ammunition within what's my understanding is a bandolier that Mr. Baldwin is attempting to wear. Several still images were extracted from the video recording for clarification.
And can you see the ammunition with the primer side of the ammunition facing the camera in this still frame?
That is correct.
Would this be an example of some of the still frames that you collected from this video at my request?
I would have to examine the specific video image numbers, but it was in this range that it becomes most visible. I'm uncertain if it's this exact video image. Every video image in a video recording is marked with a frame number, so we count them. We can count them in a linear fashion. I would have to examine the project to know if definitively if it was this video image, but it was in this series of time.
It was one of these still frames in this video,
Correct.
and perhaps more than one.
Correct. Yes.
Okay. I am going to play for you State's Exhibit 188. Same issue, Your Honor. Foundation was laid by production outfitters, and I would like to move it into evidence and ask permission to publish.
No objection.
States 188 is admitted, you may publish.
Mr. Primo, were you asked to do basically the same thing with this video?
That is correct.
When the camera was zoomed in here at the beginning, were you able to collect some still frames of the ammunition in that holster?
That is correct.
All right. Because we have to switch devices, I'm going to show you another video from a different time frame.
Okay.
And then we'll move back to the images. So I'm going to show you what is already in evidence as State's Exhibit 164. Do you recognize this video?
I do. Yes.
Is this another video that you were asked to conduct a forensic analysis on?
So this video, the way that this device works is actually recording several pictures. And the tool that allows us to interpret those images plays them back in rapid succession, giving the effect that it's a video. This is a product of that proprietary tool from that particular vendor of the camera. But in answer to your question, yes, it is a video, but in its raw format, there are actually multiple pictures.
And what kind of a camera is this? Do you remember what it's called?
This is an RE Alexa Mini, if memory serves.
And in terms of good cameras, bad cameras, sophisticated cameras, simple cameras, where does this camera fall?
The lay interpretation is it's kind of like the Lamborghini of cameras. It's a very high-end tool in comparison to other devices.
All right, thank you, sir. Can you see the ammunition there on the left-hand side?
Yes, I don't know for a fact that it is ammunition, but it's my understanding that those are casings of some sort. But yes, that's what it appears to be.
Okay. And is it somewhere in this area where you were able to isolate some still frames? And I'll go ahead and play it for you there.
That is correct. In preparation for my report from my investigation, 4 instances, 4 images were extracted from the tool in a raw RGB TIFF format. In preparation for testimony, additional images were extracted for review.
So my guess is what she's going to do is finish going through these videos and then go through specific images that he did, in fact, like a freeze frame where he enhanced something.
And for the record, I am going to show Mr. Primo States Exhibit 179 through 186. I believe there isn't an objection. I'd like to have them admitted and permission to publish.
No objection.
Case 179 through 186 is admitted. You may publish.
Thank you. Mr. Primo, I'm showing you what's been marked as States Exhibit 179. Can you describe to us what we're looking at here?
This is frame 237 from one of the two of the digital video files that we saw that didn't have audio playback. That frame on the left-hand side of the screen is what's been cropped as the area of focus.
And let me stop you real quick. As a point of clarification, I showed you two videos of Mr. Baldwin putting on his bandolier, and then there was another video of Mr. Baldwin with a young man. Do you remember those?
Yes, the two with the putting on the bandolier is what I was
Okay.
referring to. Yes.
Oh, their monitor isn't working. Sorry. They're already in.
Okay, while they work on that. Kent Kuholski, question, was this lawyer on another major case? She sounds familiar. Not that I'm aware of, but she will be on the Baldwin case. Doctor Who, 8675309, in a battle of glasses, who would win? I don't know. His are a thicker frame, but she did say earlier that she's got like 5 pairs of glasses. So with her reserves, maybe she wins. Nomad Purple, do we get to see the lawyers arguing over jury instructions? Probably not, because they didn't show the jury selection process. So my guess is probably not. Kent Kuholski, was his lawyer in another? Oh, never mind. I asked this twice. Zach Kennedy, do you think we will see the same exhibits in the next trial? Probably a lot of similar ones, especially the ones having to do with like the firearm, the ammunition. Maybe we might not see quite as much because that's less of a concern in the Baldwin case. We'll see. We'll probably see some exhibits that are the same, but I would imagine there's a bit of a Venn diagram here between the two trials. Jerry Roth, how much evidence is the state allowed to introduce? As much as they need for their case in chief. Parties aren't limited on, like, you know, how many exhibits you can admit, for example, or you can introduce, but rather like just overall time, stuff like that. So yeah, as much as they reasonably need for their case. All right, let's fast forward here.
On monitor, if they have difficulty fixing it, is it?
They are still trying to fix that monitor. Oh boy. So this is why it's nice to start a little bit behind sometimes. The G slide. Will the same prosecutor team be on the Baldwin case? Not going to lie, I'm looking forward to better defense lawyers giving her some trouble. Yes, both her and her co-counsel will be prosecuting the next trial, the Baldwin trial. So buckle up for more Morrissey. Pink Fuzzy Cow. Question, is this really necessary? Hasn't the prosecution already proven there was live ammo on the set? Yeah, I mean, that's why I said this just kind of feels cumulative. It's not moving the needle in either direction here because it's just, you know, like they've shown plenty of photos already about, you know, casings with silver primers and in the midst of casings without silver primers. So So yeah, I agree. No matter
To
purpose,
come
we
up,
get the same
he went
judge
to
for the
get water
Baldwin
for the
trial.
jurors.
Oh, were the jurors not in the room? Did we get the same judge for the Baldwin trial? Yes,
Oh,
same judge.
go ahead.
Okay. Let's, let me stop for just a moment. Mr. Primo, the first set of images that we were looking at with the styrofoam insert sitting on a person's leg and the ammunition in the background that was blurry, were you able to determine the dates that those images were taken?
Yes, the examination of the metadata, which is data about data from the photos, was evaluated in as a part of the enhancement process.
And what was the date?
The date that the metadata interpretation tool is reporting as the date time the original image was captured is October 10th, 2021 at approximately 9 a.m. 42:11 seconds.
Okay. And just to be clear, the videos that we showed you of Mr. Baldwin putting on his bandolier, were you able to determine the date of those?
I did not evaluate the daytime created information from those videos, no.
But the jury can rely on the testimony of other witnesses for the appropriate dates for that. And then we'll get to the next one in a moment. So let's go ahead and begin again. States Exhibit 179, what are we looking at here?
This is a comparison of the specific region that was cropped, demonstrating the bandolier and the ammunition. At frame 237, I don't recall which video exhibit this came from. But as you can see here on the left, this is the original information that does not have any clarification, application of any clarification to it. The image on the right is a clarified version that uses resizing of that section to make it larger, light level adjustments, shadow and highlights, shadows, midtones, and highlights, and sharpening.
And sir, in both images, but in particular in the clarified image on the right, are you able to determine that one of the supposed pieces of ammunition seems to have a silver coloring in the center?
Visually, yes. Objectively, through that deeper methodology that I talked about, no, we did not apply that method for verification.
Okay. Let's move to States Exhibit 180. Tell us what we're looking at here.
This is another instance, video image 218 from the video exhibit that was isolated. The section on the left-hand side that was cropped is from the original video image. The section on the right was clarified and enlarged. Similar processes were applied.
And in this image, when we compare it to the previous image, that being States Exhibit 179, do you see that change in color, that silver type color in the same place in both images? And when I mean in the same place, on the same piece of ammunition, or rather where the ammunition is located?
That is correct. Yes, it's a lighter tonal value or representation, which is dissimilar than the other tonal values in chroma and luma, light and color, that appears dissimilar.
I'm going to show you States Exhibit 181. Tell us what we're looking at here.
This is frame 237. Similar processes were applied. The image on the left-hand side is the original that has not been resized from the video recording. The image on the right is the clarified version that has been resized, enhancement processes applied. And then the entire image was actually resized. I don't think I mentioned this to format the screen that you're looking at in an HD resolution. So had we not performed that, it would have been a little bit smaller on the screen, because this section was the smallest that we enhanced. Smallest that I enhanced, because the resolution, the picture size from these videos was much smaller than the RE, which is a very high resolution, and even the photos from the iOS devices, the iPhones that were captured.
Okay. States Exhibit 182. Tell us what this is.
This is another representation of frame 218. So when the images were enlarged, two different resizing methods were used to verify that the information that was being enlarged was accurately being done so and wasn't an inaccurate representation when it was made larger. This appears to be the other enhancement version. As you can see, it's kind of like more blocky, pixely, if that's a forensic term, on the right-hand side when it was enlarged.
And in all of the images that we've looked at in this group of images, 179 through 182, do you see the lighter colored primer in the same position, that being what appears to be the third piece of ammunition from the top?
That is correct.
For you guys.
States Exhibit 183, what's this?
This is frame 175. If memory serves, this is from the other video recording because there's a clear indication of the front of the ammunition. I'm considering the front to be where the projectile is located. In which case, this exhibit on the left is the original section of the video image that was selected, cropped, enlarged. And the clarified version that has clarified processes applied. One particular process that wasn't included on the others is a process called deblurring. So kind of refocusing that image that we're seeing so it's clearer.
Can you see what appears to be that same silver coloring in the piece of ammunition that's third from the top?
It's more difficult to see in this version, but there are slight, the pixel information is there. Yes.
Okay. States Exhibit 184, same question.
Yes.
Look at this guy counting the ceiling tiles right there. It's much more engaging than this testimony. Just a reminder that if you're bored, the jury's probably bored. That's why I added this new poll. Do you think the jury is paying attention during the expert's testimony? So far, the results are looking pretty overwhelmingly no, but we'll see. I'll keep it up for a bit longer.
Same to everything.
The dissimilar, yes. So the section on the left is the isolated version, clarified version on the right that has been resized, and there is a dissimilar tonal value visibly between those. Specifically, we examined the two ammunition that were side by side.
Okay, thank you. States Exhibit 185, same thing, just different frame?
That is correct.
States Exhibit 186, same thing, different frame?
This is another version of an alternate resizing algorithm that was used to make the image bigger for verification that no additional information was added to the recording that rendered determinations inaccurate. Like nothing was added to the video that misrepresents what was originally there.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Cat Love Dreaming Peach, I think that last image was the rounds that Sarah threw away.
Let's move to the images that you were able to analyze from the RE video. I'm not going to play the video on this device because it will cause the system to crash. So I'm going to move to States Exhibit 189. I would like to have 189 entered into evidence and permission to publish.
Is 189 this video?
No, 189 is the digital image that he created
Okay, no
from the
objection.
video.
Okay, no objection.
Case 20.
Guys, the cat meowing is mine. That is Astra. She's a little more vocal today than she normally is.
89 submitted. You may publish.
All right, Mr. Primo, what are we looking at here? And if you recall, was there a date associated with the video from the RE?
May I have a moment to look at my report?
Certainly.
Thank you.
Yeah, Astra's not going to show up, but she's not far from the office. She's asking Miss Morrissey to get a move on with it.
The creation date associated with the metadata from the RE Raw proprietary tool, it's a program that allows us to examine the images captured directly from the RE camera in their raw format, is reporting a date of October the 18th, 2021. This creation time is reporting 5:36 and 49 seconds.
Does that tell you that that's the exact date that the image was recorded on the camera?
In accordance with the data that the camera was communicating to the file, yes.
Okay. And what are you able to see in terms of this same pattern that we're looking for with regard to silver-colored centers of what appears to be ammunition?
I don't understand the question.
Well, let me back up. What are we looking at here? Or do we have an original and a clarified?
Yes, so the image on the left is a selection of that region of the, my understanding is it's a bandolier or storage of some sort of those ammunition. And then the image on the right is the clarified or enhanced version of that image on the left.
And are you able to see, just from looking at the photo, that the top two items appear to have silver centers where the last four appear to have a different color center?
They appear to be lighter in tonal values. I don't know if I can classify them as silver, but
Okay, understood. I'm sorry.
It appears to be, if I was asked what material that looks like, it looks like silver, but whether or not it actually is, I haven't been able to verify that, but yes, visually dissimilar.
And let me ask you, in terms of the date from the RE camera, does a date and time have to be set on the camera properly in order for you to receive the proper information through the metadata for the date of the recording?
That is how most camera devices work. I don't recall specifically if the RE was set, this particular RE, by the operator, but that's common for digital cameras like the RE.
And were you, sir, able to do a tonal value analysis on this?
Yes, I was.
And again, the tonal value analysis is just a way of doing an additional verification. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And what were the results of your tonal value analysis?
So with respect to the RE images, there were no artifacts due to compression. These images were captured in a raw format, which means when the light information hit the camera's components, which is called a sensor, it's going to capture that information in raw and communicate that to a digital file, with which it's not going to make determinations about what do we take away or what do we add to make this file smaller. An interpretation of that process was done using a filter within the AMP5 tool called channel selector. And that evaluates the specific RGB color spaces that those tonal values live essentially in that raw format. And through an evaluation of the green channel, which is the most sensitive to the human eye, there is a distinct dissimilarity in the luma and chrominance values between those two sections. And when these images were clarified, enhanced, 2 of the 4 images that I examined, through adding of light to make the images brighter, this section, the middle section of that piece of ammunition, i.e. the primer, became overexposed, which means it had brighter values than other primers throughout that picture. And the tool reported that those values were going beyond the technology's ability to capture it. So what does that mean? It means that that section was documented by that device brighter than the other primers throughout the picture.
Would you say that the use of the tonal value analysis did in fact verify that? It verified that it is brighter than the others?
That is correct.
Sorry about that. And States Exhibit 190, we would ask the court to move this into evidence and publish.
No objection, Your Honor.
Case 190 is admitted. You may publish.
Mr. Primo, what are we looking at here?
We're looking at
This
paint
is
light.
a exhibit that demonstrates the selected area, approximate selected area as the other images we saw, but it's not in the compare original format. It's just a picture-in-picture that is clarified, enhanced.
All right, thank you, sir. Were you also asked to perform a forensic analysis on still frames from a body-worn camera worn by a police officer?
That is correct.
And for the record, just so that the jury is aware, the body-worn camera that Mr. Primo analyzed was States Exhibit 2. I'm not going to play it because you already have it. We've already watched it. I will, however, pull up States Exhibit 192 and ask the court to admit 192 and permission to publish.
This is going to be the
No
exhibit that
objection.
changes the whole
192
case.
is admitted. You may publish.
Even Bowles is asleep. It took him a minute to realize, oh, wait, I need to respond.
Mr. Primo, what are we looking at here?
This is a video image that was selected from the BWC recording. I
That
don't
enhancement
recall
doesn't
from the
help at
file
all.
title which particular frame this was, but it's a picture-in-picture process. Using Annotate, we can select that portion of the screen and enlarge it, resize it, add additional enhancement processes, including adjustments to the lighting, sharpening as well. So it's an enhanced version of that frame with a picture-in-picture effect.
It's enhanced
And
gobbledygook.
the label of that box still appears to be pretty blurry and not legible. Were you not able to clarify it any more than that?
That is correct.
Okay.
The compression artifacts as a result of the spatial resolution, the video quality was insufficient to enhance to make that kind of identification.
And when you say the video quality was insufficient, is there a considerable difference between the quality of a police officer's body-worn camera, this type of camera in particular, and a camera such as the RE camera that was being used on the set of Rust?
Yes, a body-worn camera, although effective, its design is to surveil. It's a surveillance camera that's worn by an officer, so they record for long periods of time. significant differences in intended use between a cinematography camera and a body-worn camera.
Really quick here. So sorry that I missed this one earlier. Yazilliclick, I think that's how you say it. Thanks for the super chat. I'm assuming that comments like, oh, okay, but the jury can rely on other testimony for that shouldn't be made. Yeah, generally speaking. Kyle Mulkey, thanks for the super chat. IMO, hung jury. They can't convict just Hannah. Well, this is her trial, right? So keep that in mind. So the jury has to look at the case as to this particular person. And did she do what she was supposed to do?
And finally, let's have a look at State's Exhibit 191. Looks like these aren't too different, but go ahead and tell us what you did.
This is the original information that was selected with the enhancement tool on the left-hand side, and then a compare original filter was applied to demonstrate the clarified version with processes to enhance it.
And why does it appear that there is actually less detail in terms of the label on the box in the clarified image as opposed to the original image? Let me ask you this. When you clarify an image, do you brighten it?
Yes, it's one of the processes to brighten it. If memory serves, when I was trying to enhance for the request was to examine any identifiers on the box, not specifically that little 2 lines of some sort of information, but to see if there were any identifiers anywhere on that container. So the light was improved to be able to examine that.
Can brightening an image actually reduce some of the detail in the image?
It can, yes.
Okay, thank you, sir. I'll pass the witness.
I would love for Bowles to stand up and be like, no cross, Your Honor. Ugh.
Cross-exam.
Thank you. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Mr. Primo, how much were you paid for your work in this case and your report? And
I'm kind of curious, actually.
The firm Primo Forensics was compensated a value somewhere in the 10,000 range.
Wow. For nothing. For nothing. People of New Mexico, these are your tax dollars at work.
in the process that you were hired to do, you take images like a picture, or you extract one from media, and then you use tools to try to clarify them. Is that fair to say?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Now, you mentioned earlier in your testimony, there's certain things that can cause distortion. I think you said if something's low resolution, is that right?
I don't remember saying specifically distortion.
Okay. Yeah, just tell me, what are some of the things that can cause you not to be able to get that clarification?
I don't understand the question.
In some of the images, it looked like at the end, the ones we couldn't see anything. It didn't clarify it, so we couldn't see what was on the box. What prevents that? The resolution originally, or why can't you get that?
The resolution does play a factor in that, as well as the compression level. So at what point the camera is limiting information to that digital video file. Those are two components, yes.
Okay. You also said in some of the pictures you could not verify tonal differences. And if I say it wrong, just tell me. But you did a verification process and you couldn't confirm?
That is correct. I was not confident to apply that particular methodology because there were so many unknown variables.
Okay. So given that there's so many unknown variables, some of them you can say that there were tonal differences, like color differences. Some of them you can't. Is that fair?
I don't understand the question.
Some of these pictures, you can't be confident that there are tonal differences? Some of them that you looked at, is that what you said?
I would have to evaluate the particular image
Okay.
to answer that question. Maybe we can
Okay.
show one of them.
Sure. Yeah, there were some of them you said I couldn't verify, and we can go back to the number of that. But I'm just trying to get that. Basically, what you did was you clarified and enhanced pictures, and some of them you can tell us the colors are different. Some of them you can't. Is that right?
That is fair to say that the dissimilarities could not be verified in terms of how that technology was actually working when it captured those values. Yes.
And your technology's got to be much more sophisticated. But it's like, you're familiar with iPhones? People can use filters, they can use edits, that kind of thing.
I'm familiar, yes.
Okay, but yours, I mean, basically, you must be using a much more sophisticated tool, correct?
It's a peer reviewable tool that allows us to apply methodology that is widely accepted. So it's repeatable, it's verifiable. It can be evaluated by people of similar qualifications to ensure that it was being applied correctly and effectively to accurately improve the information that's contained within them. I would say it's relative with respect to sophistication as to what we're comparing it to.
To an iPhone?
To a filter.
Oh, to a
I
filter.
think iPhone filter is what you had said.
Yes, iPhone filter. Yeah.
But yeah, to a one-to-one comparison, we'd probably have to evaluate which particular filter, but
Okay.
there's no magic in the tool if that's what I think we're trying to evaluate.
Okay, yeah, that's what I was trying to ask. So it's similar to a filter.
They are filters. That's
Okay.
correct, yes.
Okay.
The filters that are being applied.
Okay, thank you. I'm nothing further.
Redirect.
Yeah, just very briefly. Sir, in the images from the videos of Mr. Baldwin putting on the bandolier, those two videos that you extracted images from, the fact that you see the same color difference in the primer of the piece of ammunition that is in the third position from the top, the fact that you are able to see that color difference repeatedly in different frames, is that some indication of reliability that that center primer is actually a different color than the others? Does that make sense?
I think so, yes. So with respect to forensic image video analysis, we're evaluating things from an objective perspective. There are components to that methodology that evaluate context, and they are best practices. I was not asked to evaluate those things with this case. If I understand your question, I think I do. From a contextual perspective, yes, it does, because there are multiple instances across multiple frames with each of the devices that capture digital video files, which means more images than just one, like an iPhone. So yes, contextually, it does demonstrate that. Yes.
Some additional level of reliability.
That's correct.
Okay, all right, thank you. I don't have anything else.
You're excused. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, guys. I had to make it a little bit more interesting at the end.
Okay, thank you.
State
So
rest.
we are going to take our break for the day. I have some court I need to do at 4 o'clock. So the state is rested. So the
Oh my God.
defense will go forward.
That's a
Counsel,
choice.
please approach for a minute.
Okay, so this is let's see, I guess we'll go to live. Oh, whoa. Shoot. Okay. So I'll just keep that playing. Let's see if there's going to be anything else. I mean, it sounds like we're
All right, so tomorrow morning, we're going to have a couple of housekeeping matters. So you all should be downstairs at 10, not 8:30, 10, okay? So
it's going
I
to
see
start later.
that's,
Wait.
you
Sorry,
all,
I've got it.
tomorrow morning, we're going to have a couple of housekeeping matters. So you all should be downstairs at 10, not 8:30, 10. Okay? So I see that's good news for a fair amount of you. All right. So please don't talk among yourselves or anyone else about the evidence received here in court. Don't do any research about the Rust Productions or the movie set, et cetera, and the trial. So downstairs at 10. Okay. All right. Did I say the part? Oh, don't talk among yourselves. Okay. Very good. Thank you.
Okay. So, yeah, the choice to end their case in chief with these witnesses. Also, we never heard from Halyna Hutchins' widower. Like that is kind of surprising to me. No one from the family. We're not hearing from anyone from her family, which is surprising to me because, for the sympathy factor. That's an interesting choice. But all of the witnesses today just felt like nothing burgers. It felt like they ended on their weakest possible point. Everything from the point after everything from the point after Carpenter, their armorer expert, just felt like it was just going downhill. Like it was like there was really not much that was new. There was really not much that was compelling. It was just like, okay, and in fact, folks were saying, in the chat at least, that it was like some of those witnesses that were on set were starting to sort of move their pendulum back towards the defense. You don't want that to be happening in the middle of the state's case in chief. You want that to be reserved for the defense case in chief. So I am going to start a poll right now. I really, before you guys go, please do answer this. If you are accessing the chat, I want to know how you guys feel about involuntary manslaughter at the end of the case in chief. Okay, let me get that. End of day 8. Okay. Let's get this poll. I really want to hear what you guys say after, now that the defense case or the state's case in chief has closed. Just because, thanks for the super chat. Do you think Morrissey will try to put on her case in chief as her rebuttal case? Oh man, I don't know. I mean, rebuttal cases, like rebuttal witnesses, they really have to be responding to the defense case in chief. So for example, like the widower as an example. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to do that. The widower's testimony, for example, like I don't see how his would be triggered, like how he would be invoked by the defense on in their case in chief. I don't know. It's just I'm confused about their overall strategy here. The way that they structured their witnesses was very funky. So like the whole primacy recency effect, primacy being usually one of the first things that you hear is something that you tend to remember. Something that you hear last is something you tend to remember. All the stuff in the middle tends to get really murky for people. It gets fuzzy. You kind of tend to the finer details tend to get lost in between those things. That's why, to me, it doesn't make sense that they put the armorer expert right in the middle of all the testimony. He should have been one of the leads or one of the anchors. That would have been a way stronger way to put on this case. Now, tomorrow, as for the timing, so the judge said that 10 a.m. is the call time for the jury. Before that, she said that there are some housekeeping matters. What they are going to go through is the defense is of course going to try to dismiss both of these charges. They'll make some arguments. I'm hoping that they will have cameras in the courtroom for that and that we will be able to see it. So I'm still going to set the live stream for the same time. And if there is no access through the streams, then we'll just wait until we get access. But I'm really, really, really hoping that we can see those arguments tomorrow, because I think that they will be very, very interesting. I mean, especially on the evidence tampering charge. That felt very, very thin. I mean, they never even like ended up getting the thing that they say is drugs, right? So yeah, anyway, so I would love to see that tomorrow. I'm hoping that we can. Our potato brain, thanks so much for the super chat. Nicolas Cage could play Mr. Primo in the movie. I was kind of thinking that, which would be very ironic, right? Okay, let's see if okay, I don't think I've missed any questions in the recent comments. I'm going to go through more questions here because there's a bunch that I didn't get to yet. Okay, let's see here. Doctor Who 8675309. I'm thinking an 8-figure defense lawyer spend for Alec Baldwin. Would that be an accurate number? Definitely possible. I mean, especially with a big firm like what he's got here, for sure possible. Joshua just got here. What was the chat polling today? So earlier today, beginning of day 8, I asked, which way people are leaning on the involuntary manslaughter charge. Guilty, not guilty, or refuse to say, like too soon to say. Guilty was 55%, not guilty was 17%, and 26% said it's too soon to say. So we'll see how that compares to this one when we end it. Cat Love Dreaming Peach. Have they already determined if she's guilty of both charges, if it would be concurrent or consecutive, or does that get decided later? That is going to be based on the charging instructions, and that's going to be determined at sentencing. Jerry Roth. So Seth trained a non-armorer but didn't fully train her, but Hannah is the one on trial. Yeah, I know. Dave Beatty. I think they are doing HGR first so they can get a win before they can get their cans handed to them by Baldwin's team. Maybe they figured that this one was an easier case, and so they wanted to get that win under their belt before they move on, before they kind of level up to the next boss, perhaps. Maybe. Miss Mars, are witnesses given money for travel expenses, etc.? Second question would be, how many times does an attorney go to court per year? Like this prosecutor, for example. Thanks in advance. So witnesses can be given money for travel expenses. It happens, not always. And let's see here. If they do, oftentimes it comes up on like cross-examination. And then as for how many times does an attorney go to court per year? So if they're transactional, like never. If they're in litigation, whether they are what was I going to say? Civil or criminal, they're going to be going to court very often, typically. More often than not, it's going to be hearings. So criminal attorneys, prosecutors and defense attorneys, they're going to have trials ongoing quite a bit. Civil litigation, that was the kind that I did, rarely went to trial. But hearings, though, like all the time, like regular scheduling hearings, sometimes an argument on some kind of a motion, going back and forth in front of a judge, like that is a regular thing. Okay. Cat Love Dreaming Peach. Will Hannah testify? We'll find out at the end of the defense case in chief. So probably like Wednesday, Thursday, we'll find out. I would imagine end of Wednesday, we'll probably kind of know. Blue, didn't someone testify that they didn't remove the shells from the bandolier between takes? Why would the silver ones be in different places if they weren't removed? To be honest with you, I can't remember that testimony. Yeah, I'm not sure. Maybe that is an indication that they did move. NYH10, would it be considered unprofessional for the prosecutor to call more witnesses than necessary as a sort of dry run for the Baldwin trial to see which work and which don't? Well, I don't know that it would be unprofessional, but it's just unwise. It's unwise for this trial because, when jurors can tell that the testimony in front of them doesn't really matter, like they can kind of make that decision and start counting the tiles on the ceiling. And then like if it really drags on for a long time, they can also start making judgments, about your case overall, that maybe you're trying to fluff the case a bit, fluff your case in chief so that it's like, you're padding it, I should say, to try to make it look like you have a stronger case than you actually do. So, it can definitely backfire. Jerry Roth, can boring the jury into submission be a strategy? More often than not, you're going to bore them into boredom and maybe resentment. Neptosis, if a juror starts snoring, does that cause a mistrial? Not necessarily. They can get kicked off the jury and replaced with an alternate. More often than not, though, the judge is going to detect that before they start snoring. If a judge looks over and sees that somebody's kind of starting to nod off, that's when you'll see a non-routine break come in, where the judge says, you know what, let's take a break, and then let the jury, go and stretch their legs, go to the bathroom, that kind of thing. Like that's often what the judge will say. That they won't ever call them out on it. I mean, because oftentimes it's like people aren't trying to fall asleep, especially when they're on the jury. But yeah, usually not a mistrial, especially when there are alternates to replace someone who's a juror. Langbart, didn't the husband get paid off by Baldwin? Well, he got paid a settlement for the civil case, and that included making him one of the producers for Rust. When it does eventually, get released and everything, he'll make a certain percentage of the profits from it. So there's that. Whether you see that as paying him off or not, I'm not sure. But I mean, the statements that he has made since, for example, like people are always calling him for statement, or his representation for a statement, about like any new developments in any of these cases. And his response has always been like, hey, we're interested in seeing justice served, and like that kind of thing. So, maybe he is more cooperative with the state's case than what it might seem with that settlement. Erica, does the fact that the widow was paid off affect reliability of his testimony? I don't think so. I mean, he would be there to testify as to like the actual, like the loss, right? The person that his wife was, how important she was to their family. Like it would be for that emotional aspect of like who this person was. He wasn't there when this all went down. He didn't see the shooting, none of that kind of stuff. So it's like it would be, I don't think that most people would look at that and say like, oh, like you're lying about your testimony about like how much you love your wife, because you got a settlement, right? Like it's not that kind of thing that seems like it's going to be going to really impact the impression on the jury, in my opinion. I don't know. I mean, this is I'm obviously like speculating here a bit, because like this is just sort of like hypothetically speaking, like what he would say and what people would be thinking about in those terms. But I don't think that yeah, I don't know. I don't think people would look at him negatively for that. In fact, people would probably be like, you're the most justified in getting some kind of a civil settlement here. Scottish Jason, were you shocked to see a witness on the stand looking at his phone? Absolutely. Absolutely. They're not even supposed to bring notes up unless they have permission to do it. And the fact that he's like, looks at it not just once, not twice, but even like is like boppity booping on his phone, and like no one says anything. What is what universe are we in here? Like that was nuts. And the fact that no one said anything was like absolutely bananas. Let's see here. Lupe, would would they save the husband for rebuttal after the defense finishes? Well, they'd have to somehow invoke his testimony for rebuttal, right? They'd have to somehow like I don't know, reference him somehow. One of their witnesses would have to. So yeah, I don't know. I don't see that happening. I mean, the one thing that I can think of as to why they wouldn't have him testifying here is because um they probably know that Alec Baldwin and his team are watching this trial, and so they probably wanted to save that for his trial because his trial is admittedly the bigger one. So I think that there could be a chance that the state is saying, we don't want to make him come in twice. We're just going to make him come in once. And we don't want to, tip our hand as to, what we're going to talk about with him. And then also, if he's having to testify twice, then, people are going to look at the differences in his emotionality on the stand. And that might become a bit of a source of judgment. And, at the very least in the court of public opinion, because obviously the jurors won't have been able to have watched this trial. If they're watching this trial now, they're unlikely to unlikely to end up on that jury. Excuse me. Let's see here. Moving on down the line. I think there is maybe one more, but maybe there's okay. Jeffrey Hoffman, how long is this trial before we get the verdict? The verdict should come in. So the judge said that trial is supposed to last until the 8th. I don't know if what she meant by that was like closing statements should be on the 8th, or I mean, she can't predict how long it's going to take for them to come to a verdict, right? But I'm trying to look at my calendar from a distance. I mean, yeah, we don't know how long it's going to take them to reach a verdict, but I mean, it could be a day, it could be 20 minutes, right? There's no set formula on what a jury needs to do to come to a conclusion and how long they need to take to come to a conclusion. Oftentimes, like what I've seen with cases where somebody has died, people want to kind of take their time a little bit because it's like it's a very serious case. Obviously, they want to treat it with the respect that it should be given. So yeah. So I mean, it could be a couple days. I don't know. I'm not entirely sure. But as soon as they've reached a decision, cameras back in the courtroom, everybody's back in the courtroom, and we're watching them read it out loud in the courtroom. All right, Scottish Jason, how was that last witness different to the Rittenhouse pinch and zoom evidence that was not allowed? I think because the pinch and zoom evidence was that technology involved adding adding pixels as opposed to using the pixels that are still there. Like this one, if you could, if you looked at the two images side by side, it might make it better. Not all of the images were made better by the technology, but it might make it better, but it's really only going to get you so far. Like you're not going to end up with a clear picture with these things. The thing about the pinch and zoom was that it was like really trying to get a very clear picture from far away. And the technology, I can't remember the exact explanation about it, but I'm pretty sure it was adding pixels as opposed to using the pixels that are already there. Doctor Who 8675309, would the jury be sequestered over the weekend for deliberation? Probably not. I don't think so. I don't see this case as being one that requires sequestration. I mean, it has had a lot of publicity, but there have been other cases that there have been a lot of other cases that have also had tons of publicity as well, and they didn't need to sequester the jury over a weekend. So I don't know. I don't know what the judge will decide how because keep in mind too that sequestration takes a lot. It has an impact on the jurors because they're basically their freedom has been taken away for a period of time. Sometimes that can cause jurors to want to rush to a judgment. And it also costs resources for the state. So they have to balance a lot of different things in order to determine whether they need to sequester someone. So my instinct says probably not. KM, if the jury doesn't take long to come to a verdict, is that better for the state or the defense? I would say that's probably going to be better for the state in this case, because that means that it's been clearer. I think that with the defense, you've got to have to like really go through, talk a lot, find some reasonable doubt here and there, and go through and determine that reasonable doubt is enough to like it's in the right places for these particular charges, right? Moving on down the line. Glow pop. I still don't really know what they tried to show with the enhanced pictures. Was it the primers? I think it was the primers. I think it was the primers. But there were the thing is, I mean, and I said this like kind of towards the beginning, I think, of his testimony, that it just felt like it was cumulative. Like it felt like it wasn't giving us anything new. And that feeling was confirmed by the end of his testimony. So yeah, absolutely pointless in my opinion. Waste of time, waste of everybody's time, really. So, all right, folks, I think that for me is going to just about do it. We're out of here a little early. Let me first get these poll results. All right, end of day 8. Which way are you leaning? 50% said guilty, 27% said not guilty, 21% said too soon to say. So that has shifted a little bit. That's that went down from earlier today. So very, very, very interesting. All right, guys. So tomorrow, I'm gonna be, like I said before, I'm gonna be setting up the live stream at about the same time, 9 a.m. Mountain Time. Judge said for the jurors to be there at 10 a.m. But I'm hoping that there will be cameras in the courtroom for that motion to dismiss argument. I'm really hoping that we can see the back and forth. It might get, the jury's not going to be in there for that, so it might actually get pretty damn spicy, because now the lawyers don't have to worry about appearances in front of the jury, and they do get spicy as we have seen in front of the jury, but they do get spicy when the jury's not there either. We saw this at like the final pre-trial hearing before the trial. Obviously that's the definition of pre-trial. Anyway, so yeah, so I am really hoping that we can see that, and so I'll try to keep some communications out for you guys to see if I've got a feed up, and we'll go as soon as we possibly can. So, all right, thank you guys for joining me, and thank you to everybody who is engaging, whether in the chat or in the comments on replay. Thanks again to the mods, of course, for helping to make sure that everybody is agreeing and disagreeing and having fun, but doing it in a way that doesn't violate YouTube's TOS. So they don't punish me for it. Really, really appreciate that. And yeah, so that about does it. I hope to see you guys again tomorrow. Maybe for some early fireworks early in the day. And then we get to see the defense case in chief. We finally get to see what they plan to put on for their arguments. All right, guys. Thanks again. See you tomorrow.